Hello students, myself Professor Urvish Pimwada, Assistant Professor Electrical Department, Sri Swaminarayan Institute of Technology, Part Gandhinagar. I am your subject mentor of testing and commissioning of electrical equipment, which is in the 8th semester electrical engineering, and GTU subject code of this subject is 2180901. Students, we are currently discussing the chapter number 2, that is installation of electrical equipments, and this is our 6th lecture. In lecture number 2 of chapter number 2, that we have discussed the inspection, storage and handling of transformer, in which we have discussed in detail that why the inspection should be carried out while we receive the transformer after the transit, then the necessary steps that should be taken if the product received damage, and what safety precaution that we have to keep while unloading the transformer. Also in the storage section, that we have discussed that proper storage schemes for protection purpose for the transformer. If we are going to use that transformer after certain days after the receiving, so what precaution that we have to take for the installation or for the storage of the transformer, that we have discussed. Also we discussed the handling of the transformer, while what type of the maintenance should be required, and what type of the environment should be required for the particular handling of the transformer, that we have discussed in the lecture number 2 of this chapter number 2. So this is my sixth lecture for testing and commissioning of electrical equipment. So let us discuss the today's topic, that is inspection, storage and handling of switchgear. This is our lecture number 3 of unit number 2, and this is our topic number 3. So let us discuss how inspection, storage and handling has been carried out for switchgears. So as we have discussed in the transformer section, we are having three most parameters that we have to keep in mind while we are doing the inspection, storage and handling of the of any equipment. So we are repeating the same thing, that inspection, storage and handling of switchgear. So what inspection that we should do after we receive the product at the consumer premises. So yes, the inspection that we have to means examine that we want to examine the product. So big parts should be dismantled and transported separately. So this is the most important factor that we should keep in mind, that the accessories which are mounted on the switchgear should be dismantled, and then after it should be transit. Otherwise there might be a chances of damage during the transit of the equipment. And check all the articles as per invoice which was sent by the vendor or manufacturer. So this is the major or most important point while we inspect the switchgear after transit. Then check for the damage if meters and relays are there. So yes, for the if we talk about an accessories of the switchgears, then we are having the meters and the relays and the circuit breakers. So first of all you have to check from the outer side, means whether the outer body is damaged of the switchgear or not. That is the overall the product examine you have to do. Then you should not be means open the circuit breaker, or we can say switchgear, in the moist place. So yes, we are having the quenching mechanism, or we can say movable parts in the switchgear. So we should avoid an opening of the switchgear in the moist atmosphere, because if we open the switchgears in the moist atmosphere, it will absorb the moisture of the surrounded atmosphere, and yes, there will be a corrosion in the there will be a chances of corrosion in the moving part. So yes, should not be open in the moist place. That this point we should keep in mind while we are inspecting the switchgear, while we receive the switchgear at the consumer premises. Then the storage. So parts of the switchgear are not to be installed immediately. Yes, it is necessary that first of all we need to check all the damages, and we have to perform certain tests related to the switch gears. So yes, it should not be immediately installed, and it should be stored in dry clean place with sufficient ventilation. So this is the we can say most important point while s- uh, we are uh, we are putting our device for a storage purpose. So yes, it should be cold and free from the corrosion. So yes, the atmosphere must be free from the moisture that we have already discussed, and the place where we are storing this device, it should be corrosion free. So there will be no chances of say accumulation of the corrosion inside the switch gear. So the third point that we should keep in mind while we are putting our switchgear for the storage, that is, if the article has to be stored with a packing, it should be kept on the wooden strip. So why this is required? Because yes, wood is a good resistance of say moist. So yes, it will not absorb any moisture, and it will protect our device from the moisture and other like contamination which are present in the air. And yes, wooden strip, so that the air can be passed below the article, so it will not pass through the article. It circulate from the below of the article. So these are the points of the storage. And the next point for the storage is, article must be kept safe from rats, insects, and the termite. So yes, this is again a major point while we are storing any switchgear device at the storage place, because this kind of the means rats, insect, and termite can damage our switchgear permanently. So yes, the place where we are storing the switchgear, it must be free from these factors, rats, insects, and termites. Then the next point that we should keep in mind while we are doing an inspection of the switch gear and the storage and handling of the switch gear. So the third point, that is handling of the switch gear. So how the handling of the switch gear is been carried out. So parts of switchgear are made of insulating material, so it must be handled with care. So yes, during the transit we can say during the unloading of the instrument, there might be a chances of insulation damage. So if the damage of insulation will take place, then that can harm our switchgear in future, because insulating material provides the protection to the switchgear. So we should keep in mind this point while we are unloading the equipment, and we are keeping our instrument for the future use. The next point for the handling is, the rope should be tied from the place which is recommended. So yes, on the box it is also mentioned like a caution that handle with care. So according to the instructions means mentioned on the box, according to that instruction, the rope and other utilities we should use to protect our instrument from the further damage. And lifting lugs, which is provided on the flange for lifting the bushing, should be used. So yes, according to the manufacturer's instruction for the loading and unloading of the machine, we should obey all the rules and regulations for the lifting and the transition of the instrument for a proper protection, for to give a proper protection to our device. Then the next is the installation of the switchgear. How installation of the switchgear is been carried out, that we are going to discuss through this slide. So detailed drawing and installation should be prepared, so that it must be provided from the manufacturer or the company. So it should include the layout of installation and the wiring layout. So yes, this will be helpful for the future maintenance also. And if layout is there, then the person can do a maintenance with a proper guidance. So this is a necessary. So drawing and installation and other amenities related to the installation must be provided from the manufacturer or company. So when equipment is of outdoor type, so when we want to use our machine for an outdoor purpose, so outdoor type plan and elevation of the switch yard should be shown. So according to the plan, we have to install our device so that we can we can protect our instrument from the unwanted surges and the other factors like the atmosphere, contaminated atmosphere, and if we want to do a maintenance in future, that we can do without any hassle. So yes, the next point that we should keep in mind for the installation of switchgear, that is, it should also include the bus bar arrangement, location of the different equipment of switchgear, then clearance and arrangement of trench and drainage, etc. So these are the most important factors that we should keep in mind. So that is, the bus bar arrangement is should be at proper place where we can connect n number of connections on the bus bar, and location of different equipments of such switchgear. So yes, all the switchgear must be located according to the standard guidelines. And clearance, so that we have already discussed in the chapter number 1, why clearance is necessary, because the disturbance, or we can say means one instrument cannot disturb the other instrument, so that's why a proper clearance is required. And clearance is also necessary for the future maintenance purpose also. And arrangement of trenches and the drainage line is also required to drain the oil and other contamination at the premises. Now the permission from the user should be taken before the commencing the work. So yes, this is again a most important point. So while we are commencing any work with our switchgear, then the prior permission we should take from the manufacturer or the person who is handling this instrument. And the instruction given by the manufacturer regarding erection should be followed. So yes, the after once you receive your product at your premises, we perform the erection of the instrument. So yes, the manufacturer should provide the instructions related to the erection, and the person who is installing the switch gear, that person have to follow all the instructions which are mentioned or listed according to the manufacturer. And the points that should follow while we are erecting the switch gear, that are shown with the numbers over here. So now the first point that we should follow while we are erecting the switch gear, that is foundation and civil engineering work. So yes, we are talking about an industrial equipments, and these equipments are very large, and also the operation of these instruments are having, say, vibrations, and we have to protect these instruments from other factors like the water, oil, and other contamination, say acid and gases. So a proper foundation and a civil work is necessary for such switch gears. So we have to check this point first, that is, the proper foundation is been done and the proper civil engineering work is been done for the installation of the switch gear. The second thing, that is assembly of circuit breaker and its mechanism. So yes, the parts that should be required for the assembling of circuit breaker, that should be available for a switch gear that we are installing at the premises. And the third point, that is alignment of the whole unit. So according to the standards, we have to maintain the alignment of devices, because an alignment of devices will will be helpful for the further maintenance, and for to check all the examine the switch gear from the outer side. So alignment is most necessary. So according to the standard alignment requirement, we should install our switch gear. The next point in the installation of the switchgear is grouting of foundation. So grouting is necessary while we are doing foundation of any installation. So it is again a necessary point. And the fitting of loose instruments. So yes, if the instruments which are installed loose, so we need to fit the instruments, because if the instruments are loose, and if the vibrations means occur, so it will vibrate more, and there might be a chances of accident due to the losing of the instrument. So that's why we need to fit all the loose instrument before we use in the operation. The next point that we should keep in mind is adjustment of the circuit breaker, contact travel, etc. So yes, before we install the switch gear at the premises, we need to check all the moving mechanism, and the adjustment of the circuit breaker according to the future maintenance requirement. So yes, this is again a most important point for installation of the switch gear. And the connection of the interlock, etc. So this are the important this is the important point, because the person who is unknown with the switch gear will not touch this switch gear and not to operate the switch gear. That's why the connection of the interlock is necessary. And the eighth point, that is for the installation of the switchgear, that is filling up of the oil in the oil circuit breaker. So it is obvious that for the oil circuit breaker, generally we use oil as an insulation. So before we take our switchgear for the operation, we should fill it with the oil. So the ninth point, that is for the installation of the switchgear, that is main connection of the circuit breaker. So yes, when we have installed our circuit breaker, we need to connect our circuit breaker in our system. So the main connections that should be done according to the guidelines provided, and according to the notation provided on the box of the circuit breaker. So the 10th point, that is earthing connection. So again, that we have discussed the earthing, why it is necessary and why it is important. So after installing the circuit breaker, and after connecting all necessary connection, this is the last part that we have to connect, that is earthing. So earthing is basically connected on the body of any device. So here we are discussing the circuit breaker. So on the body of the circuit breaker, we should provide a proper earthing with an Indian standard, or we can say as per electrical standard, cable and the earthing rods. Then the other wiring that we can that we need to join according to the requirement. So the next point is checking of arc, control device, and general inspection. So yes, when we operate our circuit breaker and or switch gears, so due to the operation of this devices, arc will produce. So we have to check this the utility of say arc control devices, that we should check in priority, because if we cannot extinguish the arc, there might be a chances of fire while the switch gears will operate. And the general inspection has been carried out also after the installation. And connection of the multi-core circuit, so it is again a necessary. So multi-core circuit is related to the other utilities that we are connecting with the switchgear, and the testing and commissioning. So after installing our switchgear at the premises, we should perform certain tests related to the operation of the circuit breaker, and also we should perform a commissioning test for the proper operation of of our switchgear when we are connecting our switchgear with the main system. So these are the points that we should follow for while we are installing a switchgear. And in addition to the installation of the circuit breaker, the following points that we should check before we connect our device with the system. So first is the location where we are installing our circuit breaker. In previous section we have discussed the handling portion, and now this is for the installation purpose. So for the installation purpose, the location must be checked. If the location according to the say contaminated air and moisture is present in the air, that you should check before you install your device at the consumer premises. Then next is preliminary preparation that we should do for the installation of the switchgear. The third is leveling and the grouting, that is again a necessary for the proper installation of the switchgear. Then the connections that we should that we are going to connect for the circuit breaker, or we can say switchgear for the operation, that we need to check. Then the oil tight and air tight joints that we have to check for the further leakage. Then earthing that we need to check for the protection purpose. And the drying of the insulation, if there is moisture inside the operating mechanism, then we should perform drying out test before we connect our switchgear with the main system. And the mechanical adjustment which is necessary, that we have to perform while we are installing the switchgear. And provide proper isolators while we are doing the while we perform the operation and maintenance. This is a main parameter that we are going to operate isolators. So through the isolator we can disconnect our circuit breaker for the further operation and maintenance, so that we have to check before we are installing the switchgear. And then the level of oil and the requirement of the oil for the operation, so that we need to check while we are installing the switchgear. So let us discuss this all points of installation and switchgear in detail. So location, yes, when suppose we are using our device for the indoor, so indoor type switchgear should be located in a room, so with no corrosive gas and dust vapor which can catch fire. So this is the point that we should keep in mind where we are locating our transformer at the consumer premises. And good circulation of clean air must be required for a natural air cooling of a switchgear while we are operating our switchgear. And equipment should be installed, the maintenance can be possible. So in future the maintenance is necessary, so that's why we should keep a specific distance for further maintenance. And storage battery should be installed in separate battery room, because of say in like in future, if the accident will take place, according to the as per Indian standard, we should provide separate battery room for the operation of the switchgear. And flooring of room should be acid resist type. So yes, industries are dealing with so many hazardous things like acid and oils. So the floor must be free from the say acid, or if there means it must be acid resist type. So yes, it can harm our utility, that's why it must be acid resist type. And window glasses should be painted to prevent the sunlight falling on the batteries. So this is an important point for the long lasting operation of the battery. So yes, the battery room must be like prevented from the sunlight and the other like contaminated air and the vapor. So that must we should keep in mind while we are installing the battery for the battery room. So window glasses should be painted so that the sunlight cannot easily enter inside the room, and from that we can protect our battery for the long lasting operation. Then the exhaust fan should be installed so that we can exhaust the unwanted air from the room where we have installed our switch gears. So this is a necessary for the proper ventilation. Then the arrangement should be made to protect all the hardware and equipment against the acid fumes. So yes, this point is again unnecessary, as we have already discussed that floor must be acid resist type. So after installing, we can take certain steps to protect our switch gear from the some hazardous things like acid and oil. So the a proper protecting hardware or equipment which are required to protect our device from such things. And the next is, if we are installing our switch gear, so the preliminary operation that we have to perform, that is all construction and foundation work should have been completed before commencing the installation work. So it is necessary, because while we receive our switch gear at the premises, and if we have not done certain things or certain preparation, then we need to install our switch gear at some other place, and afterward we have to take certain step of the protection. And if we have already done the certain preparation for the installation of the device, then we can directly put our device at our required place. Then all the building material should have been removed. So yes, as we have done the civil work, so cementing and other like sand and the water are there, so we have to remove all that things to protect our device for to get contaminated from such things. Then the next point is foundation. So foundation of the switchgear should be designed for impact loading, so rather than the static loading, because when the circuit breaker operates, the vibration will be there. So considering the fault condition when the circuit breaker opens at a time of short circuit, so yes, we have to do a foundation according to the operation of a switchgear and size of the switchgear, so that this will become viable for the future protection purpose. Then the next point is that we should keep in mind for the installation of the switchgear, that is leveling and grouting. So this is related with the civil work, but leveling and grouting is necessary to install our switchgear in switchgear with a proper alignment. And the assembly which requires preciseness while we are installing our device, a proper leveling and alignment must be needed. So that's why it requires a preciseness. Proper leveling before grouting of bolts are necessary, so that accuracy can be maintained in isolation. So yes, we have a bolting structure on the plinth of the structure where we are installing our switch gear. So a proper bolting and bolting must be there, so that we can properly tight our instrument for the future operation, and we can protect our device from the further vibrations during the operation. Make drawing out of switchgear by providing the accurate leveling between each units. So this is necessary for the smooth operation of the switch gears. Then the next point that we should keep in mind while we are installing the switchgear is connections. So yes, proper spacing and alignment between conductors and units are necessary, so that it will be more convenient while we are performing the operation and maintenance in future. so one can see easily the layout and the path of the wiring. And main connection, flexible connection, then rigid connection and auxiliary connections, and the connection of the meter and the relay should be done after proper checking. So this is a part of wiring layout, so we should keep in mind these points while we are doing a connection of the switch gear. And the next point, that is oil tight and air tight joints. So basically we provide a proper insulation, not to leak the leakage of the oil in future, and also not the air should not be enter inside the inside the machine or switch gear. So yes, proper gasketing and a proper rubber gasket is provided for the fittings of such switch gears, because this will become harmful for the future operation. Then airtight joints in the circuit breaker should be made properly, because if air enters inside the switch gear, it will if the air is moist, then that can produce a corrosion between the moving parts. So yes, we need to protect our device from the contaminated air. So we have to provide a proper gasket for to provide proper insulation from the air. The check should be made so that there is no leakage of air and oil from the unit. That is most necessary point. That we have to check after we have done proper erection of the transform of the switch gear. And the next point is earthing. So yes, earthing is necessary, that we have discussed in the previous lecture. So earthing should be done solidly and properly. So one cannot move that wire or the plate from its position. So the suitable earth resistance should be selected. So according to the capacity of the device, we need to select a wire and a resistance of that wire. So yes, that should be properly made so that we can avoid a future danger. Then the next point that we should keep in mind is drying of the insulation. So drying is necessary before commissioning, and the precaution should be taken taken to see the insulation damage due to the direct excessive heat. And the drying should be done by standard procedure, because as we have not used our switch gear while we received from the manufacturer for certain days, so we have to check all the moving mechanism and the level of insulation before we take the switch gear for our operation in the system. Then mechanical adjustment that we need to do, that is precaution should be taken during the transit of the circuit breaker. So yes, that provides an additional protection for the circuit breaker if the accessories are mounted to the circuit breaker, and during transit it might get damaged. So yes, that should be the precaution should be taken during the transit of the circuit breaker. And the delicate accessories should be sent separate to avoid such damage and during the transit. The next point is it should be ensured that the three single phase units operate simultaneously. So this is required for the protection purpose. So yes, the connection should be made separate for all three single phase units, and it must be operated simultaneously. Then the isolators are required to disconnect our switch gears from the system. So we need to check the isolator operation while we are installing our switch gear. So correct setting is necessary so that the mechanism move freely. So isolator basically we operate manually as well as the automatically. So we need to check all the moving parts of the isolator before we use our switch gears for the installation. and we are isolator is a part of switchgear, so we need to check the movement of the isolator and close properly, otherwise in result it may result in fire, because a heavy spark will produce between the context of the moving mechanism, so that we need to check the operation of the isolator. Then the next point for the installation of the switchgear is oil. So again, oil is an important factor for the installation of the switchgear. So clean and dry oil should be used. So it must be not contaminated. There will be a no contamination inside, presence inside the oil, or we can say there will be a no moisture inside the oil. And dry oil means there is no contamination and there is no moisture inside the oil, so that we should check that we should ensure before we use that oil for the operation of the circuit breaker. Then tank should be clean before filling up the oil, because yes, if there is a dust particle and dust particles are there inside the tank, then that will become dangerous for the operation of the switch gear. So we need to clean the pit where we are filling the oil before we fill the oil inside the tank. Then fixed and moving contacts should be checked and clean. So yes, check whether it will there will be a corrosion, or corrosion is there or not, that we need to check. And we need to perform certain tests of the moving mechanism of the switch gear, that we have to ensure before we install the device. And hose pipe should be made of rubber, because the sulfur in the rubber mixes with the oil, and which reduces the dielectric strength of the oil. So when the sulfur mixes with the oil, so dielectric strength of the oil will reduce. As obvious, we are using oil as an insulation purpose inside the insulation and the cooling purpose inside the switch gear. So we have to check the quality of the oil, and we need to check the future operations, according to the future operations also. So yes, the hose pipe should be made of the rubber, because sulfur in rubber mixes with the oil and reduces the dielectric strength of the oil, that affects adversely the copper contacts. So that points we should keep in mind while we are installing our switch gear. So this is all about the lecture number 6. And if you have any queries and doubts related to this topic, then you can call me to solve your doubts related to this topic. And also we can solve your doubts and queries in our doubt solving session. The assignments related to this chapter will given in the last lecture. So thank you very much, student. Thank you all. Jai Swaminarayan.